Welcome to Mighty Banyans on the Bay.
New College Faculty Conversations.
Welcome. It's a sunny Sarasota day, and we are Mighty Banyans on the Bay, faculty podcast of New College of Florida. My name is Douglas Estes, and I'm the Associate Professor of Religion here at New College.
And I'm Alicia Mercado-Harvey, Assistant Professor of Spanish and History. And today we have a really exciting podcast with Professor of Mathematics. He's an Assistant Professor, Vlad Serban. He is, teaching in natural sciences. And welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you two.
Wonderful. And we want to start, by telling us, why did you come to New College?
Oh, that's a great question. So I came to New College. I initially hadn't heard about New College. I was in Europe and sort of applying for jobs. And through my in-laws, who happen to own a condo in Florida, I heard about New College. And once I started to actually look into what this school stood for, I was very intrigued. And I thought, I could actually see a future here. And so I think some of the things that attracted me were to be at an institution that, places an emphasis on teaching and educating students with this kind of mentorship model where they can be sort of led by their curiosity and have autonomy in their studies. But then which also values researcher faculty where I can still have time and resources to do that. And I think the two are important to me. So it was really great to be able to have this opportunity and come here. So I think
great. Let's talk about your research first. You recently published some work on lattices. Tell us what lattices is, why it's important, why is it something you're passionate about?
Yeah, so lattices are kind of a fundamental mathematical structure. You can think of like a window lattice, right? When that's where the name comes from. And so it's kind of this structure that is made out of fundamental cells that are rearranged in a regular pattern. And so mathematically, it's kind of you take n vectors if you're in n-dimensional space, and if they're sort of in a position where they're not parallel, and then you look at integer multiples of those vectors. And so this gives you sort of the corners of your window lattice, and then sort of you have these fundamental cells that fill up space. And so if you've looked at, even in 2 dimensions, there's different shapes, right? You have like rectangular lattices, but then they can be slightly sort of diagonal. And so mathematicians study the properties of these kind of arrangements. It turns out they pop up in various other sciences as well. There are connections to cybersecurity, to information theory, and things like that. So mathematicians, we kind of study objects because we're curious about them, not primarily for applications, but still there's some kind of motivation that they're objects that are worth studying. And yeah, you can define them in any sort of dimension.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. And you came to New College from École Polytechnique, Lausanne, where you had the privilege, I guess you would say, of studying with a Fields medalist, Professor Marina Wiazowska. Sorry, there you go. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tremendous opportunity. So yeah, she actually won the Fields Medal while I was there.
Wow.
And it was a great honor. And I think working with such people, it's just fantastic because they really sort of bravely tackle the hard problems. And so, they don't do research to publish or for any other sort of proxy metric, but they actually really go after the interesting problems. And they're very generous. Marina is an example of that, generous in her time with students, with people she works with. And so, yeah, we got interested. So she did work. She received her Fields Medal for work on what's called sphere packing. And so maybe in 1 minute, I can explain what that's about. So I'll use the example of cookies. So if you imagine you have a large sheet of like cookie dough, right? Flat sheet of a bunch of cookie dough, and you have these round cookie cutters. You're trying to make, cookies for Thanksgiving, let's say. And so you want to cut out these circular cookies without overlap, so they're perfectly round. And you want to sort of throw away as little cookie dough as possible, right? The leftovers.
Right.
So that's an example of an optimization problem. And what it really means is that you're packing 2-dimensional space by these disks, by these spheres, right? So the optimal way to do that, that's kind of something that mathematicians study. And this problem was solved for 2 dimensions a long time ago. It turns out that nature already figured out how to do this. if you look at bees and the honeycombs,
Oh yeah.
well, these cells, right? If you put a circle, like a disc in the center of each cell, that is the optimal way, and you can prove it. And I did it in one of my classes. You can prove that that's the best way to do it, the best way to cut out your cookies. So that is actually a lattice arrangement, because the centers of those spheres will be arranged in this kind of regular pattern, right? If you look at a honeycomb, that's a regular pattern. So yeah, we study that. And so what we did work was about how do you do this in high dimensions? Because mathematicians, we're not limited by 2, 3, 4 dimensions. We can do it in a million dimensions and more. So that's kind of the question that we asked, and we're able to make a little bit of progress towards that. But it's a very important problem.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I just wanted to, ask you a little more about the collaboration with this wonderful award-winning mathematician that, is for our listeners and viewers. This is a person who won what would be the equivalent to a, Math Nobel Prize, right?
Something like that.
Something like that. So it's a really important award. And you're still associated with her. Will this have anything to do with your work at New College?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I just kind of Zoomed with her this morning. We're still working on things. And so we're able to develop a new technique to study certain spaces of lattices and kind of understand how certain quantities are distributed. Basically, previously, people just knew what the average is, and we're able to quantify like the variance and the variance of the variance, things like that. So we know more about the distribution. And what we really wanted is to like sort of, improve on like the best records and to optimize this kind of arrangement in high dimensional space. And so we're still working on that. But yeah, it's ongoing work, and we're always trying to improve things, to discover new things. And so we'll see where it leads. But I mean, for the community, it's great. I'm hoping at some point to connect students also with the people I know. And it's always like an enriching experience to collaborate with people like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. What's your favorite class to teach here? Or maybe the class you're most passionate about?
Yeah, I don't typically like favorites questions,
Okay.
but
All right.
I will humor you.
Okay, humor me.
Well, they're twofold. Like I enjoy teaching sort of the more advanced classes. So last year I taught a class on lattices, and was able to give snippets of what actually pertains to my research to students that were accessible. And it was fun designing that class, but it's also in some ways challenging. But yeah, that's always exciting. But I also enjoy working with sort of students that are starting the mathematical careers. So for instance, this semester I'm teaching a first-year seminar entitled Human Flourishing in a Mathematical World, where we do a bit of math, we do some puzzles, but we also think of like, what is the wider context for mathematics? And that's also something that, can happen at a school like New College, but doesn't necessarily happen at some of these big research universities.
Yeah.
And so it's an additional thing that attracted me here.
Yeah. I wish that I had been able to take that class. As we talked earlier, one of the challenges I had as an undergrad, and I know I'm probably not the only one, is that I took a lot of math classes, and I never really felt like, why does it matter? I was just told, do this problem. Tell us a little bit about applicability and maybe some of the ways that you increase applicability or help students to understand math better.
Yeah, I guess applicability is one thing. What got me into it is that math has this uncanny sort of ability to make sense of the world around us. And it's actually something quite remarkable, and I talk about it in class. Like, there are other voices from science and physics that we bring in. But basically, math is this kind of almost a game that we play. We try to solve these puzzles. We try to make connections between ideas. But it's kind of remarkable that it actually allows us to predict so much about the world and to shape the world so much, right? And so for me, it's this combination between the beauty, the aesthetic pleasure that you get in solving these puzzles and discovering, and then the fact that it actually reveals something profound about the universe. And so that's kind of what drew me to it. You might call that applicability, but then I'm a pure mathematician, so applicability is not sort of the end all, right?
Right.
But yes, if applicability, if you mean by that you understand how the universe works, that you are able to shape it, then yes. And the fact is that is remarkable is that if you kind of carried by logic and curiosity, you keep discovering things, you end up with unexpected applications. So an example of that in mathematics is that in the earliest 20th century, people were studying these abstract number theoretic objects, and it was on nobody's radar that 50 years later, those would be the cornerstone for modern cybersecurity, or at least a big part of modern cybersecurity. And so a lot of the tools we use today are based on advanced mathematics. and I mean, that is sort of remarkable in itself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we tend not to think about all the things that math really is involved in, as you're saying, computer science, astronomy, there's so many different things,
Yeah.
And, segue to this, there's some things happening in natural sciences. So could you tell us, what things you're involved in? I understand there's a colloquium, right, happening. Tell us a little more about
absolutely. I'd be happy to. I love my colleagues in natural science. We have a great team, and amazing things are happening. One of the things that we kind of started or restarted because there was COVID and things died down is a series of speakers in natural sciences. And so the idea is to, one, celebrate science, celebrate our community, but also give students access to world-leading experts. And so we try to kind of encourage speakers and coach them to make their research at least accessible to students, and bring them in and share that with them. So we've had a couple so far. We had to cancel the first one due to hurricanes, but there's another one a week from now, and we'll just keep it going, especially as demand grows, and we're really excited about that. So yeah, there are things happening. And again, it's a unique opportunity for students to come and hear snippets of what it's like to be a researcher, what people are working on right now, and also make connections if they're interested in sort of going to graduate school. So I want to encourage students to come out, and you will not understand everything, but we're trying to encourage speakers that you understand at least a good chunk of it, and that's already fantastic.
Since you mentioned career path, I understand that we have a lot of students right now interested in business. How does the math piece go into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, what I always say is math is like a superpower. We're all lifelong learners, or at least I encourage you to be. And you always should learn, for instance, things like how to manage data, how to code, and these are skills that are becoming more and more important. However, the mathematical foundations of those things, like doing a mathematics degree, allows you to really be strong in those important foundations. And that's something that's much harder to add later because it's very rigorous and deep. And so if you have that skill, it's like a superpower. You can always add on, do some economics and business or coding or things like that. Even religion, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it's true
Yeah,
because
no, it is. Yeah.
mathematics. I mean, I was interested in religion and theology too, but
Right.
for me, math is almost like applied theology. I'm like,
Okay.
There's a point to that, yes.
it's because you learn also how to. So we teach proof-based classes, right? So you learn how to reason logically. We use a lot of logic and deductions, and so you learn how to sort of analyze your assumptions and draw conclusions, and those are very transferable skills. So yeah, a lot of exciting things, and historically, a lot of the people who end up doing a math degree, whether it's an AOC or secondary, didn't come in necessarily wanting to do mathematics, but then they discovered how exciting it is, and they discovered the community that we have in the math program, and just kind of stuck around and had a lot of fun. So that's kind of my answer to that question.
Yes.
Yeah, great. I think that a lot of students a lot of high school students may be good at math, but they may find the idea of majoring in math or focusing on math in college to be a little bit daunting. What would you say to a student who is interested in math, but they just weren't sure? I know superpower. Is there anything else you would add?
How can you beat superpower?
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we all communicate sort of attitudes about math and expectations about math, and sometimes the experiences that you encounter along the way might discourage you to pursue something. And so I guess my encouragement is at a school like New College, try it out and see, give it a go. We have an academic sort of system that allows for you to do something challenging and not be penalized too much for it, right? With the contract system, it allows you to explore, to be curious. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If you're not sure, give it a try, connect to people, and see what happens. And maybe you'll find out it's not for you, but maybe you'll get really excited. And if it gives you joy, then maybe it's something that you should pursue, basically.
Yeah.
So I have a question to that. We seem to be having right now a generation of students that are very afraid of making mistakes. How do you handle that in math? Because in math, it is literally trial and error. Mm-hmm. So, are you seeing this difference? Are you managing this in a different way, or?
That's an important question. I mean, thanks for asking it. I think that one of the things that you quickly realize when you're a mathematician is that struggle is part of the job. I mean, for instance, for me as a researcher, my default sort of position is being stuck. Right? It's not like I'm basically stuck for a long time, and I'm stuck on various things simultaneously as well. So, and like daydreaming away most of the time. But I'm stuck on these various things, and sometimes you have a good idea and you try it and it fails. And every now and then suddenly something opens up. And then you're able to pursue it further. And so a lot of people have compared it to you walk into a dark room and then you try to find a light switch, right? And so once you've switched the light on, everything makes sense, then you can make, and it's a beautiful aha moment. But most of the time you're stuck in the dark. So I think one of the things is we as kind of leaders and role models, we can be sort of honest about the struggle. And, one of the things we talk about in this kind of first year class is that math is not sort of this linear career, and it's not all dictated by your mathematical ability. And so, there are a lot of paths to success in mathematics. And it's not just for the super geniuses. And you shouldn't say I'm bad at math or I'm good at math. Neither one is actually a good sort of, one is sort of pride and the other one is kind of putting yourself down. When really there's ways for everybody to sort of flourish in math and to learn something and to be edified by it. As long as you're open to it. So yeah, I'd say understanding that struggle is part of the way, and having role models who actually are open about that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So what does the future look like for you as far as research goes? What are some areas of math that you want to tackle next?
Oh yeah, that's I have many projects and so little time.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the in terms of research, I mean, I want to continue sort of this story with lattices and dig more into connections with, I guess, this field in computer science called coding theory. There's actually a strong analogy between these kind of optimization problems on the lattice side and what's called error correcting codes. So in 1 minute, I can explain to you what that is. So imagine you're on the Voyager or some kind of spaceship, and you're taking space probes, and you want to send information back down to Earth. You have little memory to store everything, so you want to send it right away. Say if you take a picture of a planet or something like that, and basically your message is a string of zeros and ones. If you encode your pixels and things like that, so you can reduce everything to sending ones and zeros, right? And then you're asking well, I'm sending my information over a noisy channel. So there might be some error that enters the picture. So this error will flip some amount of your positions, some amount of zeros to ones and vice versa, right? And so if you have an idea of that error, you can ask the question, how can I send most effectively, most efficiently, as much information as possible while allowing for this error correction? And so this is kind of this subject in coding theory that's very much, applicable, and it's kind of a discrete version of this lattice packing spheres problem, because you can think of your ones and zeros as sort of these these points of the lattice, and then your error is kind of if you can fill up your space with spheres, then every center of the sphere, that proportion of space there's a unique closest point, so you can sort of decode in that way. That's the rough idea. So there are connections there that I want to explore more. there are ideas that we have in one realm that we could maybe explore in the other, and vice versa. That's in a nutshell one of my projects. And the other one is to keep doing some of the research that I did more during my thesis, which would take another 10 minutes to explain, but there are some new ideas that I have there and some things that I could push further and that people are interested in. So yeah, a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully I find the time and the inspiration.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you are going to be working on, or you're currently working on, may have an impact, if I understood right, into things like computer science, right? I mean, this is where this would be most applicable, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the realms. And like right now, for instance, we have a student who's working on cybersecurity for their senior thesis, and it's lattice based. So there are these kind of avenues. I mean, one of the stories, for instance, is, have you heard about quantum computers? So one of the ideas is that if we had functional quantum computers, our current security protocols would become unsafe because the underlying math would become easy to crack. And so people have been searching for systems to communicate that are robust and that can resist these attacks. And so lattices are one of the sort of main avenues, main objects used in that, because there are certain hard mathematical problems that can be leveraged into security protocols. So most of the, let's say, most of the suggestions that the National Institute for Science and Technology has for quantum secure cybersecurity systems are based on lattices. So that's another connection besides this kind of flipping zeros and ones error correction that lattices have. So a lot of kind of avenues there. The question is, do you start with an application in mind and work your way back to figuring out the math? Or do you study the inherent objects and then kind of, as you get to know them better, sort of the applications pop up, right? And I would rather be the latter, right, being a pure mathematician, but there is sort of a dialogue going on. And what we see in many sort of research institutes is that more and more like physics, mathematics, computer science tend to have so much overlap and a lot of kind of shared questions. Even if you take this sort of quantum computers as kind of physics, computer science, but it also affects mathematics. So yeah, there are a lot of exciting things happening, and I hope to make some contribution to that.
So last thing that I wanted to ask you, so this sounds fascinating. So if any of our viewers are potential students that want to come to New College and want to explore math, so what would be your advice? And also, give your contact so they can, directly contact you.
Yeah, so you can definitely reach out to any of the faculty. We are really available and happy to talk to you. Just come and talk to us, essentially. We have a fantastic math program here that has been very successful at sending people to the best graduate schools. And I mean, even from the first class of New College, in the first class that we had in New College, a mathematician named Bill Thurston actually won the Fields Medal and revolutionized his field. So there's kind of this illustrious history, and we hope to continue it. So yeah, come talk to us. I have a website. If you just Google my name, it will send you to it. Or we have a mathematics page, and you can sort of email any one of us, and we'll be happy to talk to you. And yeah, just come give it a try. And we're really looking forward to meeting you. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're really excited to have Professor Vlad Serban here with us today.
And please send us your comments, questions. We love to hear from you. And as we always end the episodes, we always go
Mighty Banyans!